It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Mandy the Martyr. And now, on with the show! Hey everybody, it's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey gang.
And Les Webster.
Hello.
How are you guys doing?
Doing alright.
Doing well, and you?
Doing okay. So what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
Well, this week I'm gonna do a little commercializing, sort of. Well, I mean, it's not something we don't normally do, but I'm gonna plug a Kickstarter.
Okay.
And this will not surprise you, Tom. The book is called Plague Doctor, and that is actually doctor spelled with a K. So this is by a bunch of guys called Fifth Dimension Comics. A guy named David Brown runs the thing, and he's written this, and he's working with an artist named Dennis Coyle III. And this is about a 60-page graphic novel available on Kickstarter right now. It is set in during the Black Plague, not surprisingly. The main character is a young guy who is serving as what at the time was referred to as a plague doctor. They would go around attempting to help out the people who were sick with the plague before they died, because a lot of them died. This is a disease that it is estimated killed a quarter of the population of Europe over like a 20-year span. But so our guy Nils, he thinks he knows what is causing the plague, and so he is trying to hunt down the creature that he thinks is causing the plague. And let's just say he has very little idea what he's in for. It is a very, very wide-ranging story. I don't like to spoil things too much, so I won't spoil too much. But let's just say that this is kind of a bit of a supernatural horror story, and it's a lot of fun. And it has about 3 weeks left on its Kickstarter campaign, and it has already made goals. So go support it, and you're getting a book one way or the other. If you search for 5D Comics, you will almost certainly get it. Or Plague Doctor. Plague is spelled like plague. D-O-K-T-O-R is doctor. Just search it up, check it out. It's very cool.
And you just did a review for that book, right?
I did, strangely enough. That's why I figured you wouldn't be surprised that I was talking about it. Because
that's okay.
I did review it, and I did like it. And I have, honestly, I will also admit, I have supported these guys a lot before, so they do some really cool, dark stuff.
It's interesting how the plague is being used as a story element now. I don't know. I'm sure it's happened in a past, but I mean, with Plague Doctor, and then we've got Pestilence going on as well. But it's not a plague; it's actually a zombie infestation. It's kind of interesting. I think it's kind of cool to use a historical,
right, historical fiction, as it were.
Right.
But with comics.
Right.
Yep.
So cool. It sounds interesting. I'll definitely check it out. Les?
Well, this week I was put to task by my wife to clean up my room. And that was quite the adventure. We had visitors coming over on the 4th, and she wanted to make sure that people could walk through the house. So my room was in total disarray, and I started on Thursday of last week and lasted through, my final touches were on the 4th of July. So it was almost round the clock.
That explains why you were not around the store. Okay.
That is one of the reasons, yes.
See, and you started talking about this, and I wondered, was this because she actually wanted you to clean up your room, or was she just trying to get rid of you for several days? So that you would go in your room and oh, this is cool, and sit down and read it, and pick up something else, and go, oh, this is cool, and sit down and read it, and just be lost for hours, if not days.
Well, the problem is the TV is also in the room, so...
So yeah, you really would be lost for days.
I would be lost for days, and then she had the audacity to come in and want to watch TV, so...
The nerve.
Well, you kind of got to give in to her. It was her birthday, so...
Oh, wow. She's a 4th of July baby, huh?
Yeah, and then the next day was our anniversary, so back to back.
Yeah, see, we got married on the 3rd.
I forgot about that. Yeah, I forgot about her birthday being the 4th and then the anniversary being the 5th. Yeah, there's a lot of wedding anniversaries that are around me that are about this time of year. Not just Mikey's, but a couple of mutual friends around the same time too.
Yeah.
When you're friends with a lot of teachers, you end up with stuff like that. They have to do it in the summer.
Good point. So cool. For me, this was my week of nothing really major happening, so blah, blah, blah.
Big bag of nothing.
Yep. I was due for one, so here it is.
Yep.
Welcome to my world.
Woohoo!
Yeah, it happens to everybody.
Yep. Alrighty. Before we get into this week's topic, you take a couple of moments to thank our sponsors. First of all, I want to thank Peter Simeti, who just celebrated a birthday on the July 4th.
Really?
Happy birthday. Yeah, happy birthday to him.
Nice.
Of Alterna Comics and the Make My Indie digital catalog. And yes, it's summertime, so the summer catalog is now available. It's 147 pages of print, digital, and web comics from indie publishers. The catalog includes previews, reviews, interviews, a lot of really cool stuff of titles that you may not be aware of. If you go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and click on our sponsors tab, first thing you will see is the logo for Make Mine Indie, and there will be a link that from there you'll be able to download a free either a CBZ file or PDF file and check it out. You never know, you might find something that's really cool. I know Mikey and I have, so do that today. I also want to thank Things from Another World for sponsoring the Fellowship. Really cool website. Has a lot of great deals. The current ongoing promotion is up to 50% off on select Game of Thrones products. That's good through July 16th. As well as their evergreen deals such as 40% off comic statues, toys, and merchandise. 30% off pre-order manga titles. And 50% off Nick and Dent comics. So while you're on our sponsors page, if you just scroll down, you'll see information, especially some of the latest deals that they're doing. And if you click on one of those graphics, that'll take you to their website. Let them know that we sent you their way and take advantage of some of these awesome deals. Okay. Before we get into this week's topic, I do want to put a disclaimer. The origin of this week's topic came from a tweet that I wouldn't even say it's even gossip. I don't even think it was. It's just something that was kind of thrown out there. It's not been as far as I know, is as of a couple hours before airing, has not been confirmed or denied by the parties involved. So, that this tweet had picked up some steam, and the only reason why we're going to be talking about it this week is, honestly, I think there's a possibility it'll happen, and if it doesn't, it's something kind of cool to chat about.
Yeah, so basically, this is going to be all speculation.
It's all speculation, but hey, that's what a lot of us do anyway, so hey.
We will not be the first podcast to work off of pure speculation.
Exactly.
And it's probably not the first time we've worked off of pure speculation either, so.
True. So, with that said, we're going to talk about it anyway. Said tweet, which we'll have either a link to one of the websites or we'll have the link to the actual tweet, basically said that Barbara Broccoli, her and her father, who was Cubby Broccoli, owns Eon Productions that have been doing the James Bond films from the get-go. Barbara Broccoli apparently has some admiration toward the shared Marvel Cinematic Universe and is possibly considering doing the same thing with 007. I know there was talk in the past of, and I meant to look up the character's name, it doesn't matter to this point, that there was going to be a spin-off for Halle Berry's character from Die Another Day, if I'm not mistaken. Was that the film that she was in? Her character was in? Anyway, that they were going to spin that character off in their own film, but that was all talk before the movie was released, and obviously it kind of died after that. It died pretty quick. So if this tweet is accurate, that there could be a possible shared 007 cinematic universe. And so I kind of want to go, do you think this will happen, and how do you think they would handle it? So I have my thoughts, but I'm going to open up the floor and let someone else talk first. So who wants to go first?
Okay. Well, for one thing, her name was Jinx.
Jinx. Thank you.
Yes. And yes, it was Die Another Day. A James Bond cinematic universe. I have to say I think it's an interesting idea, and also I think that it has some interesting precedent at this point. One of the reasons I think it's interesting is because, man, they've done well over 20 movies already.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that an argument can be made that they're kind of starting to run thin on story. And there's various reasons for that, I think. I mean, believe me, I'm not really going to bash the Bond movies in general. I am a pretty big Bond fan. But I think it would be a weird choice right now to do that, because the last few Bond movies have, I guess, made plenty of money, at least enough to keep going, enough to keep the franchise going, but they haven't really been all that well received. Partly because, like I said, the stories are just a little dodgy at times. There's story there, but it's one of those things where the last few, when I've seen them, I've been like, oh man, it would have been so much more fun had they done this, 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 and this. And I mean, I'm not usually the guy who does that either. I mean, I could, but I don't want to. It's not any fun. People don't like people like that very often. So, and I'll be honest, the most recent one, Spectre.
Mm-hmm.
I bought the Blu-ray, but I haven't watched the movie yet because, to be honest, I have yet to hear anything good about it, which is really, really a bummer for me because in terms of just the title of that movie, it's the Bond movie I wanted after the two before that. I really want. I'd been saying for years, and Tom, both of you maybe can vouch for me on this. I have been wanting them to go back to the Spectre days story-wise for a long time, because I think they got to a point where they started patterning movies after the one that had been most successful, and the weirdness for that was that was Goldfinger.
Yeah.
Which was the not Spectre movie in the Sean Connery run. So, whatever.
It was the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Blofeld was the bad guy in all but Dr. No and Goldfinger.
Yeah, but it was still Spectre.
And yeah, Dr. No was involved in Spectre, but all the rest up through the end of Connery's run were Blofeld. But so I'd wanted to see them get back to the big bad guy, especially since the fall of the Soviet bloc. They needed a bad guy, and it wasn't going to be the Russians anymore. So my thought was, we'll go back to Spectre. Well, from what I understand, like I said, I haven't actually watched that movie yet, but it doesn't sound like they did it all that well.
Yeah.
And so that would be essentially three, I don't want to call them flops because they weren't. They made money. But three films that were not well received in terms of story in a row. I don't think this is the time to start talking about doing multiple movies at the same time. I think they need to kind of get their shit in order and start creating good movies first. And in their defense, when you've taken movies to the almost extreme level of action that the Daniel Craig Bond films have become, story doesn't necessarily have to be a big deal. And that's fine. But again, there's only, you can't just have Bond beating the tar out of everybody all the time and expect it to be a well-received movie. It just isn't. I don't know. I just don't think this is the time for it. I think they need to do something. They need to do some other things first. They need to prove that they can still make a spy movie with a good story before they start making multiple spy movies all at once.
I agree with what you're saying. It does not help when you have the films Mission Impossible and in the Bourne franchise, where that's where it's pretty much all it is. It's a lot of action, a lot of explosions. It's fast paced, and the story kind of takes a back seat. But then again,
individually, there's nothing wrong with a movie like that. I mean, It can be a whole lot of fun. I mean, you named a couple of really good examples. I'll throw the Fast and Furious ones in there as another example.
Yeah.
They're popcorn movies, and that's fine. Yeah. But
I mentioned those specifically since they were more spy oriented.
Right.
Well,
you say that.
Well,
yeah.
I haven't watched Fast and Furious, so I have no idea. So I could be just talking.
I have not seen them either, but my understanding is that the later ones, it has gotten to be more, if not spy, then at least kind of in that. I mean, almost Bond-like in that way. Not true espionage, but it's kind of leaning in that direction.
Right.
But anyway.
And I remember our discussions and us lamenting the fact that the Bond films have been very cookie cutter, where they introduce a villain, and then at the end of the film, Bond has to kill him, and then all of a sudden you set up for the next movie. You have to create a new villain again. You don't have that reoccurring threat, and with Spectre, that gives you something. It doesn't necessarily have to be Blofeld. It could be a lieutenant, and then you can have your cake and eat it too. You kill off the lieutenant, but Spectre's still there. I have not seen Spectre yet either. When I first heard that they got the rights back to where they could be able to use Spectre and Blofeld and all that again, I was very excited. Then I saw the trailers, and I saw nothing there that made me go, I really want to see this film. And the response from what it's I've heard similar responses to what you've heard, and so I still want to see it at some point, but I'm just not excited about it. I kind of agree with you that there needs to be some rethinking, maybe some reorganizations. I mean, we may be having a new Bond here soon anyway, because Daniel Craig's not signed up for another one.
And he can't seem to make up his mind whether he wants to or not, from what I can tell.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine making those movies as a friggin' beating.
Yeah.
But
and from what I have looked into, there was hope that there was going to be a new Bond film late next year. I would say that's
seems unlikely at this point.
I seem very unlikely because, first of all, you don't have your star signed. As far as we know, there's no script. And then now you got to turn around and shoot it, edit it, and everything else, and then get it into the theaters by supposedly next November. And we're obviously, if you're hearing this at a later date, we are recording early July. That's asking a lot.
Yeah, you're talking about basically a 15-month turnaround, and you haven't even started. Given Eon Productions, they probably do have a script, or at least the beginnings of one. But you can't possibly do what you need to do with that film in post if you haven't started shooting yet to release it in 15 months. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, if they could happen, you just really have to doubt the quality of the film. And given what you were saying,
right, you already have reason to doubt the quality of the film because the last three have been.
While it's pulled in money, it's not done. Yeah,
not well received.
Yeah, you talk about the scripts for the last few. I would go back a little bit further than that, but that's another that could be another.
Yeah, that's a well. I'm actually where I'm kind of drawing that line is Casino Royale. Casino Royale was well done, and not just because it was based on Fleming's novel. It was well done. It was the last one that was well done. Although I will also say I thought Quantum of Solace was underrated. I thought it was better than people thought it was. I cannot say that for Skyfall. And again, I haven't seen Spectre.
Right.
I just haven't been able to screw up my courage enough to do it yet. I'm just so scared I'm going to be disappointed, especially given at this point I haven't heard anything good about it yet. But anyway, maybe if I go in with low enough expectations.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I agree that Craig's predecessor, Pierce Brosnan, the scripts weren't great there either. I mean, GoldenEye was good. It was really good. GoldenEye may be one of the better Bond movies of all time. But those last couple were iffy. And it was that was a different Bond. But
yeah.
That's the thing is I think it would be difficult to start what you would call a shared universe, a series of related movies that are not all focused on the same character. I think it would be difficult to do that with Craig. I think you're going to need a new Bond to even start that. And so if they're really serious about bringing Craig back for one more, I don't think that starts now. I think that starts 5 years down the road.
Yeah, because that was kind of my thinking too. Is whoever was going to play Bond, they're going to have him signed up for quite a few pictures because they would probably want him to appear a little bit in some of the other films.
Oh yeah.
Just
he's going to have to be Robert Downey Jr. Not literally, but he's going to have to be the guy who shows up for 5 minutes in this movie and for 10 minutes in this movie, just to tie it all together, because it's a James Bond shared universe.
Right.
Yeah, Downey's too old. There's no way. Could he do it? Yes. He sure as hell could. But
yeah.
Now, what you want to do is you want to remake the original movie that they made for Casino Royale and cast Downey in the elder Bond role. But that would also require one hell of a script, because that was a really twisted movie. For those of you who haven't seen it, it came out in 1967, I believe, and was not part of the normal canon for James Bond.
All right, Les.
I was going to say, speaking of popcorn, Les is back there just eating his popcorn, watching us go back and forth.
Yep, pretty much. Special guest by the Swedish Chef, everybody. Hey.
And that's how Thor should sound, not English accent.
Not Shakespearean. Okay, yes.
Hey, you want to get a Shakespearean actor to direct the first movie, you get what you get. All right.
Yeah. Looking at the Bond idea, I don't know that they have right now enough established characters to hold their own. I know there was that thought of Halle Berry as Jinx would be a great film, and that got no further than Halle Berry's character would make a great film. Who would you have, and what characters would you have? Jinx, Felix Leiter?
I think Felix Leiter would be a good one, because he's now. Granted, I've not read the novel, so I don't know how well the character has been established. So I can't say anything on that.
I don't think that the novels have much to do with this, to be honest.
Okay, true. But for the films, he's pretty much a freaking gopher cleanup guy.
Yes.
He's the CIA liaison whose job is to constantly cover Bond's ass with basically the U.S. government.
And I think he can be a lot more than that. I mean, obviously, someone else has, because Dynamite is finishing up a miniseries starring him. It's not a James Bond book, although they call it James Bond Felix Leiter. It's a Felix Leiter story.
Yeah, Bond barely appears in it at all. When he's in it, it's basically a flashback of a conversation.
Now, how well it's being received, I don't know. We'll know that when they decide whether or not they're going to do a follow-up or that kind of thing.
Well, and I'll tell you, one other option for another focus for another shared universe Bond movie is actually in that Felix Leiter Dynamite book. And that would be Tiger Tanaka.
Ooh, Tanaka, yeah.
Yes.
From You Only Live Twice.
Correct.
That's an interesting one.
He was the head of the Japan branch.
Yep.
So, yeah. And he was a badass. And he was one of the few of those folks that actually survived his movie. So that alone makes him a candidate. Anyway,
so go ahead, Les.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, I'm doing fine. I look at some characters that always show up in Bond movies, and I can't see them carrying off one. M, I don't see as being a star of a movie. The weapons man for the group, who was that? Do you remember?
Q,
thank you. Is Q going to be able to carry it? No. Q is kind of a stodgy character in the Bond movies.
Yeah, you say that.
in the old ones, but
In the old ones, he was a stodgy character because the same guy played him for nearly 50 years. Um, the last couple, it's been a much younger guy.
Well, they had John Cleese in one of them, did they not?
Yeah, that was the last Pierce Brosnan.
yeah. When
Okay.
they
So
when they changed to Daniel Craig, they went with a younger guy to kind of switch the whole old school master to the kid. So now Bond's the older guy, and then here's this smart ass kid who comes up with these really cool weapons and gadgets.
Yep.
Okay, and then what you're telling me is it's like getting a movie about Alfred Pennyworth instead of Batman.
Yes, to an extent,
Yep.
which could
And I
work in
can't
that
quite
context.
see that.
It would almost be, well, if you do it right, it's not the only oddball one, but it would be a bit of an oddball. It wouldn't be, like I said, it wouldn't be the Daniel Craig beating the shit out of anybody who walks within an arm's reach type of movie. It would be a different kind of movie, but I think for me, that would be the way to do it. Is you don't want them all to be exactly the same. Again, you don't want the cookie cutter thing going like
Well,
they've
granted.
become. And so
Well,
to have, it can still be espionage. It can still have the traditional Bond flair for humor, and it would be definitely a different flick because he's not the beat the hell out of somebody type of guy. He's the guy that's going to use his brain. He's going to use the gadgets that he's coming up with. He's going to think on his feet
he's a MacGyver.
to an extent. He's a modern MacGyver.
Yeah.
Okay. About, what was it, last year or the year before, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. came out,
Yeah.
and they
Mm-hmm.
ran it successfully. That film, anyway, I thought was really good. But it was successful because they kept the time period. Now, do you possibly toss Bond back into an earlier time period to accomplish some of this? And rather than gadgets that were created 40 years, 50 years after the first Bond movie, not appear in a retro look and possibly pull it off. The second thing I ask is, if you do character movies, do you stagger them like Star Wars has? Give you a Star Wars movie and then you give a, what was it, Rogue Squadron, Rogue One, whatever?
Yeah.
Okay, do you stagger it that way, and then after the next Star Wars movie, you get another filler movie to keep the fans happy? That way you've got 2 years to set up your next Star Wars movie. Marvel does that right now with Guardians, and then they've got Spider-Man coming up, and pretty soon the new Avengers movie will be coming out, and just they build their universe by staggering films, by getting you different characters, and they're able to move around. They've got a stable full where, I'm sorry to say, to me, Bond is pretty limited as to who you can draw upon. Is that making any sense?
Yeah, it does. And I agree with you to an extent. Because, yeah, I mean, if you take essentially the canon as it stands right now, yeah, you're going to have a hard time finding a bunch of B and C level characters to base secondary movies on. So it's going to take some creativity in terms of writing. You're going to have to either, or it's going to be a skillful combination of creating new characters and merging them into the Bond universe and pulling out select characters that might work. And honestly, a couple that might not work. Because there are characters that were there and existed. And I mean, I wouldn't put it past them, or I wouldn't rule out the possibility of bringing back one or two characters who maybe died in their first movies, and just sort of kind of tweak the canon a little bit and say, "Oh yeah, well, you got better." Because like you said, they don't have this massively long character list like Marvel does. But yeah, I mean, for my money, the staggering the movies thing, I mean, that's if they're going to do it at this stage, that's what they're going to do because it's worked so well for Marvel. And
Hmm.
it's actually, I hate to speak too soon, but it's threatening to actually start working for DC because now they have one to start with, even though it's like their fifth one that they've tried, but they were bound to get it right eventually. As for your other idea, I like your other idea. I like the idea of kicking things back in time and doing, and I almost think it would be interesting to do it in parallel, like along with the rest of the Bond verse. Have one have I mean you could do it with 3 tracks. You have the straight up modern Bond movies. You have the second track of the side characters getting solo flicks, and then you do this third one, which is the throwback 1955 Bond. I say my thing is the reason I like this idea is because I'm a fan of the books. And the books are very much a product of the time in which they were written, which was from the early 50s to the early 60s. They're basically 50s. I hesitate to call them spy novels. They're almost not even spy novels. It's based on some of the same ideas, but it's a very different character than even from Dr. No. And it would be a very different type of movie, but I think it would be really cool to see them try.
They could refer back to the books doing a retro.
Absolutely. They should very
Uh,
much refer back to the books to do a retro.
a closer adaptation, maybe.
Hmm.
And I think I've read a few of the books too, and I find them fascinating, but you weren't having to lean on gadgets so much in the books. There
Right.
were gadgets, but they weren't the prime concern. And even in the early Bond movies, they were trying to adapt books, but they were doing so many gadgets
Well,
that
they were trying to spice them up. They were trying to add flavor because, like I said, those books are a product of the 50s, and they're making movies for a mainstream mid-60s audience, even at the beginning. So yeah, they were having to add some flair. Sorry, I interrupted you again.
no, I left it open because that is true.
Let me throw this idea out there as because we both of y'all have mentioned not enough characters to be able to support a shared universe. How about a series of films based on Spectre itself?
The origin and
You can do an origin and then just kind of go from there, and it could kind of be a kind of do like what Agents of Shield on TV's been kind of doing with the films, and kind of feeding each. They could be feeding each other. Assuming you want to keep using Spectre as the villains for the main Bond films, but kind of feeding each other a little bit. You see some seeds that are planted in this Spectre film, and they come to fruition in the next Bond film, and then vice versa, and that kind of thing. Just throwing that out there.
do you make them oppose each other like Hal Jordan in Sinestro and say that a member of the agency went rogue and started his own group as the start of an origin story, or was this something established through the Cold War itself?
Well, how is Spectre originally created? I mean, either one of those ways is fine with me. I think either one of those could be interesting ideas for an origin. I don't know what the origin of Spectre is, other than what has been said in the films, which is virtually nothing. It's just this organization.
It's just there.
It's just there.
And that's pretty much how it was in the books as well. I mean, it didn't even come up that often in the books, but I mean, Blofeld got mentioned, and so it was kind of his organization. And it wasn't the bad guy in. It was in the background a lot, which kind of like, I mean, to a lot of the early appearances of quote unquote Spectre in the films, they were the bad guy, but they were very kind of the bad guy from the shadows sort of thing, which in and of itself probably doesn't lend toward being the quote-unquote star of a series of films by itself. That, and I mean, the main difference, and this is, I feel like I'm kind of saying something almost stupid at this point, but the main difference there is with S.H.I.E.L.D., they're the good guys already. Spectre, not so much. And you don't want to over-glorify your long-term villains, because the lines get really blurry, and whereas that might make for some very realistic espionage flicks, it's not going to make for much of a Bond movie, because the deal with Bond is he's not necessarily always a nice guy, but he is the good guy, and it's usually pretty clear. They muddied the water a bit with Craig on that one, and I think that was to their detriment to an extent. So I like the idea of using them as the enemy organization in some of those flicks. I don't know if you want to focus too hard on them.
Well, the other obvious choices is to feature other double O's.
Uh-huh.
One of the articles I mentioned, or I saw, mention kind of trying to kill two birds at one stone, because I'm sure you guys have seen over the last few years a lot of calls for an actor, for Idris Elba. There's been a lot of demand for him to play Bond.
Mm-hmm.
And in this particular site, it said, well, if you have him as another 00 agent, then he's not Bond, but he is part of the organization. He is a 00, and then there you go.
He can be a Bond-style character.
He can be a Bond-style character.
That's actually a really cool idea.
Do you think that they would cut back on the humorous parts of it to bring in Elba?
I think they've already cut back on some of the humorous aspects of it with Craig, so why not? I don't know how much further you can cut that back.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure Elba couldn't pull off some of the humor, too.
I'm sure he could.
He can, yes.
You would have to do something to make him... You want him to be a Bond clone, but not really a Bond clone, if that makes any sense.
Right. You want him to be...
You want him to be his own character.
You want him to be a high-impact agent, which isn't necessarily this specific guy. You want to develop a character that's also a high-impact agent like Bond. And yeah, I think that's very doable. I think you could do that with more than one. I think you could find 3 or 4 people to do that with.
Well, if you gave him the armament he had guarding the Rainbow Bridge in Asgard, I could see him doing some damage.
Oh, yeah.
He is a fine actor. There's no doubt about that. There's been even talk of him, well, you said taking the Bond role.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a problem with that either. I think it'd be a great move. course, I'm of the opinion that maybe the Doctor should be female for a stint and see what happens.
Well, there's been talk about him being the next Doctor, or being a choice for the Doctor as well.
Yes.
Also not a bad idea.
Nope. You mentioned this, if they go forward with this, that it would be another Bond actor. Would you continue the way things were, kind of like what's happened with the previous changes at Bond? Or do you do a somewhat of a soft reboot again, like they did with Craig?
I think they've kind of done a soft reboot with every new Bond. And I don't see any reason not to this time as well. I think, I don't know. See, this is where you get into kind of personal opinions. And I am of the opinion that the Craig Bond is a little too brutal. I think he needs to lighten up, one way or another. Whether he goes humorous or not, I think the next Bond needs to lighten up quite a bit. Craig is a little too intense for my taste. I'm sure there are people who disagree with me very much.
But wasn't he closer to the James Bond in the books? James Bond in the books was not a nice person to start. And I just feel like he was closer to what Fleming was giving as a source. And the humor came from the writers of the film.
Right. Yes, I agree that I think in more ways than one, Craig is a good Bond if you go back to the beginnings of Bond. I think he fits that type really well. But I think between taking the style way more violent with his Bond and kind of removing the humor from it almost entirely, I think it's just a little too far in that direction for my taste. Again, this is my opinion. I liked the possibilities with Craig as Bond even from the beginning, but even in Casino Royale I thought he was a little too, I can't really think of a better word than intense. He was a little too
close to sinister.
Cold.
He took life without regret, with no remorse.
I think cold may be another way to put it. I mean, even when Connery, and again, that's not even going all the way back to novel Bond, but with Connery, there was a switch that he used, I guess, is probably the best way to describe it. He could do the sinister, but he could just as easily pop a snide line off. And it worked together. With Craig, there's no snide line, or very, very few of them anyway. And even when they're there, they don't quite seem genuine. I mean, it's as if he's trying too hard to be that sinister version, and he doesn't quite know how to turn it off. I don't know. I'm probably overanalyzing it at this point, focusing too much on detail here.
I follow what you're saying, though. I can back that up too. I support you in those ideas. I thought Craig, though, I've only seen one of the Craig movies, and I enjoyed it. But once again, as pre-established, it was a popcorn movie. No big thought process needed to go into it.
Right, and the one you probably saw was Casino Royale, right?
No. What was it? It's not Solitaire, is it? What is it?
Quantum of Solace?
That's it, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, And see, I agree. I mean, like I said, Casino Royale, I thought was actually a really good movie. And it
Yeah.
was, I mean, it was as accurate as you're going to get now, modern times, with a Bond movie to the original novel. Quantum of Solace was the next one. And it, I thought, focused a little more on the violence. Because, I mean, that whole thing was a revenge movie, which was fine. And I still think it was a little underrated. I thought it was better than most people said it was. Because once you accept that it's just a revenge movie, then it's easy to just sort of follow Bond around as he's beating the crap out of everybody. Skyfall, I didn't think worked. It was trying to. I think they had become a little more conscious of the fact that it was not really, that Quantum of Solace was not an espionage movie. It was not a spy movie at all. And so they tried to make it a little more of a spy movie, and it ended up dragging at times. In my opinion, again, I thought it was way longer than it needed to be, and I'm not sure it was that long a movie, to be honest. So it just didn't work that well in general. They tried to make it a spy movie, but then they tried to make it a little too personal with the Craig version of Bond, which was this cold, impersonal creature to begin with. It's like they were trying to give him a personality or something. It just flopped. So I'm not really sure what my point with that was either, but I think they just haven't handled Craig's Bond all that well. And so, yeah, I think it is time for a change. I think we need a new Bond. I think we need a slightly less cold Bond. I think we need a slightly more personable Bond. And at this point, I don't think Craig can do it. I don't think he can pull it off. I don't think it would be believable if he tried. So, yeah, that's going to be a big hang-up to I keep wanting to say franchise, but they already have a franchise. The shared universe thing.
Mm-hmm.
But to throw back to something you hinted at, Tom, the comics, I have to say I have been really happy with pretty much all of what I have seen from Dynamite as far as the James Bond comic goes, including the Felix Leiter series. I think they've done really well. And I also want to say, you were talking about characters. I want to say I remember reading somewhere that they were going to do a Moneypenny one.
There's a Moneypenny one-shot coming. And in doing some research, apparently there was a series of books a few years ago. They were kind of like, I get like a young Moneypenny. I think it was based on more of the Moneypenny from the Bronson era. So so they've tried a little something with her. Can she pull off a film on her own?
Now, if you read some of the Dynamite comics, and if you go with the Moneypenny that's in there, absolutely, absolutely, she could carry it.
Well, I'm trying to remember. Wasn't the Moneypenny in Craig's Bond? Wasn't she an agent that she basically kind of? Because
she was basically an agent with a desk job.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if they talked about why she didn't have a desk, or why she wasn't really in the field anymore.
And that basically, if I'm not mistaken, was in Skyfall, because that was when we had the spoil alert for a movie that's I don't know how many years old now. We had the change at M. We had the M change.
Yes. At the risk of a spoiler for a 5-year-old movie, they killed
I
them.
wasn't going to go. Yeah.
It's 5-year-old
I wasn't going to go
movie.
there, but I know. I wasn't going to go there, but I said that there was a change at M.
This is 2 films ago. I mean,
Right.
I think we're beyond spoiler range at this point. Yes, they killed them. They killed the Dame Judi Dench version.
Dame Judi Dench's version. Yep.
Sorry, Les. Ruined that one for you.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
But again, like I said, that was a really slow Bond movie. I don't really recommend that one anyway. But yeah, so I think, I mean, so effectively you're going to have a younger M. I don't know who the M was in Spectre, so I don't know. Probably oh, yes, I do, because they did bring him in. It was Ray Fiennes.
Fine. Yeah, it was Ray Fiennes.
So yeah, he's a bit younger. I still don't know if I would go that route. I would use M as M in.
Yeah, I wouldn't do M as his own movie. Now maybe definitely Moneypenny.
Yeah, I think Moneypenny would be a blast.
If they do the whole agent who just gets assigned a desk job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
like in the comics, like I said.
Right.
Yeah, that could be a lot of fun.
And especially now that there's a lot of demand for more female led movies, especially in action adventure films. I think she would be a great choice.
Oh yeah, and I also think that would be a great, like with the Idris Elba idea, it would be a great way to bring in one or two female double O's.
Yep, exactly.
In addition to Moneypenny.
Yep.
I was trying to think of who you'd cast, but man, I'm not really up on my early 30s British actresses at the moment, so I haven't thought of anybody yet.
Yeah. So, to kind of sum up, we think it's a good idea, but it's going to need a little work, and we would have to have a different bond, and it depends on exactly what you wanted to do with the films, right? Is that it, pretty much in a nutshell?
I'd say so.
Okay.
I agree with that too. And I will say that this is one of the grimmest discussions we've had, yet to me very entertaining.
What do you mean grim?
There wasn't a lot of levity in this one.
Oh yeah, see, y'all done made the mistake of sending me off on a Bond tangent for the whole show. That's the problem here. I get wound up. This is my fanboy. This is what my fanboy looks like right here.
Oh, he's on to us, Thomas.
Well, any final thoughts before we move on?
I think I've had enough thoughts for one day.
Yeah.
I've taken control way too much of this thing.
No, I think it was all good myself.
It was interesting. It made me think of things that I hadn't thought of, and hopefully you out there in the audience who are listening to this, hopefully you enjoyed it as well. So when we come back, our weekly picks. And we're back. It's time for our weekly picks, and I lead off this week. And my first choice is from Image Comics. It's Mage, the Hero Denied, issue 0, written and illustrated by Matt Wagner. This begins the concluding chapter of the Mage trilogy. The first one was Mage, the Hero Discovered in 1984. And the second one was Mage, the Hero Defined in 1997. And issue 0 is basically a bridge between Defined and Denied. And so it's a setup as kind of a jumping on point for a new reader, especially since it's been 20 years since the last story. And it centers around a man known as Kevin Matchstick, who is found out to be, I'm trying to remember, is he part of the Pendragon bloodline, or is he Pendragon reborn or whatever? And instead of having Excalibur, the sword, he has a magic baseball bat, which gives him superhuman abilities. So it's been so long since I've read this, I'm gonna have to pull out the books to go back and check this out.
Yeah, I'm thinking since it's been 20 years since the last series, you probably are justified in not remembering all the details.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about your delays for Image, huh, Les?
No doubt.
I'm kind of excited. It was I remember enjoying the first two, but it's been so long. So, alrighty, Mikey, you're up next.
All right. Well, my first pick is a dark horse book, and I don't think anybody's going to be surprised when I pick Groo, the Play of the Gods, #1. This is Groo. I kind of don't care what the story is. I want Groo. But I say that. Apparently, there is going to be something doing with the acting profession somehow. I don't know. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see how stuff gets twisted and how much fun it will be. Because this is with Groo, it's never a matter of is it going to be fun. It's always a matter of how fun will it be.
Hmm.
Because I'm a big fan, and I know both of you guys are too. And if you out there in the listening audience have not experienced Groo, jump on and check it out. It's a lot of fun.
There are a lot of collections of his stuff, and I highly recommend it also.
It's a great all ages, crazy fun time. Definitely. I recommend this one as well. Alrighty, Wes.
My first choice comes from IDW, and it is Dread Gods #1, written by Tom Marz and Tom Rainey. I am looking forward to this one because it is a science fiction fantasy storyline in which gods in a fantasy world discover that they're actually monsters in a post-apocalyptic landscape. So this I want to see because the question is, are they going to be defenders, or are they going to say, okay, you see a monster, you have a monster? The art is by Bart Sears, who is legendary in his own. So I'm looking forward to this one highly.
Yep, sounds cool to me.
Yeah, it sounds rather interesting. Cool to check it out. Alright, for my second choice, it's from Dynamite Comics. It is Mighty Mouse #2, written by Shelley Fish, and with art by Igor Lima. And if you have not read the first issue, it centers around a boy who is teased a lot, and he's a big Mighty Mouse fan, and he gets bullied and picked on in school, so he's not really enjoying life, and his only means of escape is Mighty Mouse. And at the end of the issue, he was watching a Mighty Mouse cartoon, and somehow Mighty Mouse was yanked out of the TV and has shown up in the real world. So this issue is following up on that, with Mighty Mouse having to discover what's going on and try to adapt to being in the real world, and more than likely trying to figure his way out, the get back to his own existence. So it should be kind of interesting. It was the first issue was intriguing and interesting enough that I wanted to follow up.
Same here.
Yep, I thought so too.
Mikey.
Okay, my next pick goes a little darker, to say the least. I'm going with an Image book called Kill or Be Killed, #10. Yeah. We got Ed Brubaker, we got Sean Phillips, we got Elizabeth Breitweiser, we've got pretty much the stuff that you're used to seeing from those folks. It is dark, it is crime based. The main character, Dylan, is hearing a voice in his head, and he believes that it's a demon, and it's telling him to do things. And it's the longer he goes, this is the end of the second arc. The longer he goes at doing these things, which is basically killing people, let's be blunt about it, the harder it gets to kind of maintain pretty much across the board. And it's been The narration, especially, I have enjoyed because it is. I mean, it's essentially the running inner monologue of a guy who is clearly not with it. He's clearly losing it, and so it's a lot of fun in that regard.
It has been an interesting run, and this should be a good capper for this story arc.
Yep. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Les.
My second choice is by Rob Popchak and art by Owen Gianni. Gianni is the artist for Rat Queens, which I think is a fun series. Even in their new launch, it's got me hooked. In this title, Immortal, by Keenspot Entertainment. Wow, I'm doing sci-fi fantasy again. This is the story of an immortal, Eliza, who was a 16th century noblewoman, but she made the mistake of partying with Nostradamus. Now she is an immortal, and in the present day of 1997, she is a librarian, and she is also an adventurer with the usual sword. But it's her trying to adapt to that time frame also. So I don't know offhand if this is a limited series or if this is ongoing. Either way, it's got me interested right away.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't
Yep.
agree more. Sounds like fun. Sounds like
Yeah,
something
definitely.
right up my alley.
Alrighty, I believe we all have honorable mentions this week. We usually do.
Mm. It's
Alrighty.
so hard to narrow it down to two, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So my honorable mention is from Space Scope Publishing. It is The Howling: Revenge of the Werewolf Queen, #1, written by Mickey Nielsen and art by Jason Johnson. And this is a sequel to The Howling 2, which is, how old is that movie now? About 30 something years? It
Yeah,
was early
I'm
80s.
thinking, I was thinking mid 80s, but yeah,
Early to mid 80s.
been a while.
Well, okay, 1981. There you go,
Oh
right
wow,
there.
is that early? Okay.
Yeah. But it's been 3 weeks since the events of the film, and obviously the werewolf queen is coming back to get revenge for what's been going on. Oh, that'd be kind of fun. It, it was it was a fun film. I remember Patrick McNee and Christopher Lee and Sybil Danning being in it, but it's been a while since I've seen the film, so I may need to pull it out and refresh my memory, and then I should be able to enjoy this a lot more. But it'll be fun either way. I'm sure they'll cover the events of the film in the book, kind of just as a refresher. So
Or make the story so that you don't need to. Either way.
yep, that's true. That's true too. Yeah, that's fair.
Yep, could be fun.
Alrighty, Mikey.
All right. My honorable mention is an Image title, and it is Black Cloud #4. And this is written by Jason Latour and drawn by Greg Hinkle. And I got to be honest, one of the reasons I'm throwing this out here is because this is a book that's almost impossible to describe. It is the best. I mean, I'm going to sell it short by saying that this is a modern fantasy sort of thing. There's some hints at time travel, and it's centered on this young woman named Zelda, who is clearly the center of something, although it's something that she doesn't quite understand herself, and the people who are trying to sort of push her in the right direction are very vague. it's it's one of those things. I think you kind of. I mean, I'm recommending it at issue 4. You probably need to start from the beginning because picking up 4 is not going to work. But it's a really oddly interesting book, and I feel like I'm not. Like I said, I feel like I'm not selling it all that well. But it's one of those that kind of has to be experienced. But it's very cool.
I have to admit that I missed this one, so I'm gonna have to go back and try to catch up.
I'm in the same boat, Thomas.
Ha! I actually stumped you guys for a change. Cool.
Dun, dun, dun.
Well, I'm still wondering, who is this Groo character?
Right.
Right.
Some guy, I don't know. Wasn't he in like a Despicable Me movie or something? I don't know. No, he was not. That's a different Groo. Spelled differently. I'm kidding, people. I'm kidding. Before anybody goes writing in telling me how dumb I am or whatever. Anyway.
Alrighty, Les.
My honorable is a trade coming out from DC Comics. It is Planetary, written by Warren Ellis, art by John Cassidy. This was, 15, 20 years ago that it first appeared. And in this trade, they collect the issues 1 through 14, a sneak peek, and a crossover that Planetary had with The Authority. This was around Wildstorm before DC absorbed it. So if you haven't caught this one, this is a fun read because of the multiple references to other genres and characters. I think I'm going to go try to get a copy of this too, because trying to dig out the back issues is far too much a challenge right now.
It's a little tough, yeah. Especially, well, I'm sure it's tough for you since you just cleaned up your room.
No kidding.
So.
Right, and finding stuff from 20 years back is, I'm sure, challenging on a good day anyway.
Right.
But yeah, I'm curious about this. I've heard a lot about it, and I've never actually read it, so I'd like to pick it up too.
Yeah, I missed out on this one. So, it sounds interesting enough. Alright. Special mentions. I have one.
Go for it.
Okay. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the passing of Joan Lee a couple of days ago. And if you're not familiar with that name, she's the wife of Stan Lee. They've been married for 69 years. She passed away after suffering a stroke at the age of 93. And she is the one. It's kind of interesting reading some of the stories, because she's not one of those that was very visible. Or at least I did not see a lot of her. You always saw him at the premieres and at the conventions and stuff, but I never really saw pictures of her. But at one point, he was about ready to quit writing comics. And this was, I guess, late 50s, early 60s, because he was writing monster comics. And she talked him out of it. And shortly after that came essentially the Marvel Universe. He was writing Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, and obviously the rest is history. And some of the stories about how they met, I think if I saw correctly, he proposed on when he first met her. So it sounds like it was just kind of, it was fate that they would meet, and obviously, you know, December would have been their 70th anniversary, so our condolences to Stan Lee and the family and friends and loved ones. She sounds like she was a remarkable woman and had a nice long life.
Agreed.
Any other special mentions?
Not me.
I've got nothing right now. Thanks.
Okay. Alrighty. Let's go on to our shout-outs. First off, to Manny the Martyr for the awesome music for our podcast. If you get a chance, go check out their music. There will be a link in our show notes, or you can go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and go to our podcast page, and you'll see their logo. You can click on that. That'll take you to their site as well. Thank you guys so very much. You're awesome. Second of all, the Pattern family of Twitter, who can so kind as to retweet and share our links to our podcast, and we've been doing our darndest to return that love. If you're looking for any kind of podcast, if there's a podcast that you're looking for, you just go to Twitter and do a search, hashtag Pattern Family, one word. You don't necessarily have to have a Twitter account. And it will pop up hundreds of different shows. And check them out. You never know. You'll find something that I'm sure you'll like. A lot of great people. Some really cool shows. So we thank them for supporting us. And last but certainly not least, you, dear listener, thank you for downloading and listening to this episode and checking out our previous episodes. We always value your feedback. If you have a comment, suggestion, question, complaint, we're always willing to hear you out. And here's several ways you can contact us. First, you could just go to our website. Once again, that's www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and go to our About Us page, and there's a contact form there that you can fill out, and we can get it. Or you can just shoot us an email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and we'll respond as quickly as we can. You can follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks. Feel free to like us there, and you can contact us, and we'll respond as quickly as we can. And as I already mentioned, we are on Twitter, at Fellowship Geeks. Feel free to follow us there, and shoot us a message if you would like. Mikey has his own Twitter account, at Mikey Geek, and I have one as well, at TomTC Geek. Feel free to follow us there and shout out to us if you like. That would be awesome, and we'll return the pleasantries. And wherever you download or listen to our episodes, whether it's through iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or YouTube, it would be much appreciated if you rate our show, whether it's the star system, number system, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever. That would be much appreciated. And if you have an extra couple of minutes, a review would be awesome as well. Just a reminder, we are accepting questions for a future Q&A episode. If you have a question that you'd like us to use for us to discuss on an upcoming episode, feel free to contact us through the sources I just mentioned, and we may use it for an episode. Question of the week.
All right, question of the week. Who would you pick as the next James Bond?
Ooh, that would be good. That would be tough.
It is tough.
It would be tough.
It is tough.
It's very
I don't
tough.
have an answer off the top of my head. I'll have to think about it.
Right. Okay, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I think you nailed it.
Okay. All right. So, anything else?
Just thanks, everybody.
Same here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. We appreciate the support. Love you guys. And until next time, read more comics and support your local stores. We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,